The morning sun was barely stretching across the sleepy street when the old sedan rolled to a gentle stop in front of the music academy. The campus was quiet at this hour. Too quiet for anyone to realize who had just arrived or how the day ahead was about to shift everything. The man stepped out slowly, the kind of slow that came from years of carrying more weight than strength. His name was Morris, and he glanced around with a soft sigh, studying the wide wooden entrance, the tall windows, the faint echo of violins warming somewhere deep inside the building. He had taken the long route on purpose, anything to calm the nervous pulse in his chest. He didn't belong here. At least that's what life had always tried to convince him of. But today wasn't about belonging. Today was about his granddaughter, and if he had to swallow every drop of pride he had, he'd do it without a sound. He reached into the back seat for the violin case that had been with him longer than half the faculty inside. Its leather was cracked, its strings worn, but it was the only thing he'd ever learned to trust. He steadied the case under his arm and walked inside, his footsteps echoing against the old stone floors. Students hurried past him in polished shoes and crisp uniforms, barely lifting their eyes. Teachers marched to their classes with clipboards tucked under their arms. The entire building seemed to move with purpose he no longer recognized. He scanned each face, hoping to find the only one he came for. Instead, his eyes met something else. A pair of cold, narrowed eyes belonging to the academy's lead instructor, Ms. Halder. Her jaw tightened the moment she recognized him, as if his presence alone was disrespectful to the institution she worshipped. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her expression carved every syllable. You don't belong here, and you never will. Morris straightened his shoulders and kept walking. If she wanted him to feel small, she would have to try harder than that. He followed the sound of strings, tiny mistakes, and shaky notes bleeding from one of the practice rooms. That had to be her. He slowed as he reached the open door, heart thumping, like an old drum that still had some fight left in it. There she was, Lena, standing stiff with her violin raised, but her eyes unfocused. Her bow trembled just slightly. She was trying too hard to hide it, the very same way he used to do at her age. She felt like an outsider here. She felt like a shadow in a room full of bright, confident stars. And Miss Halder hovered inches away, adjusting Lena's posture with the kind of impatience that didn't belong in a classroom. No, the instructor snapped. You're not listening. You don't press the string like that. You're rushing the rhythm. Again. Lena's breath faltered. I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. Miss Halder shot back, stepping away with folded arms. Not here. Morris clenched his jaw. He didn't want to intervene, not yet, but something inside him twisted every time he heard someone speak to her that way. Lena spotted him standing in the doorway, and her face brightened instantly. Grandpa! Miss Halder turned sharply. Her expression sank even lower. Oh, she muttered. You're back. Morris ignored the sting. He just lifted the violin case, just checking on her. We're in the middle of a lesson, she replied coolly, stepping between him and Lena, as if shielding the entire academy from him. And she needs focus, not distractions. He exhaled slowly. Focus comes from support, not pressure. Halder's smile was stiff. Cold. That depends. Some students need to face the truth early. And what truth is that? He asked quietly. That talent isn't something everyone is born with. Some children simply can't keep up. Lena's fingers tightened around her bow. Morris felt something inside him shift, an old, buried fire cracking awake. "She's keeping up just fine," he said. "She just needs space to breathe." Ms. Halder scoffed, turning to the class of students who pretended not to listen. "We run a professional institution here. Excellence is expected. Struggling students slow down the others." Morris stepped forward. "She isn't slowing anyone down." "Oh?" The instructor raised a brow. "Then why is she still failing basic scales?" Lena lowered her eyes, embarrassed. Morris softened. "Sweetheart," he murmured, "look at me." She did. "You're not failing anything. You're learning." Miss Halder crossed her arms tightly, irritation spilling from every line of her face. "Perhaps you'd like to demonstrate how much you know about learning, Mr. Morris." She emphasized Mr. like an insult. He nearly smiled. "Fine." He placed his old violin case on the desk, the room falling silent. Students leaned forward. Some whispered. Miss Halder frowned, but didn't stop him. Morris unlatched the case with the slow reverence of someone greeting an old friend. The violin inside was weathered, darkened by years, scarred by life, but undeniably beautiful. He lifted it carefully. Lena's eyes widened. Miss Halder's narrowed. "Please," she said sharply, "this is hardly the place." But it was too late. Morris set the violin beneath his chin. He closed his eyes, breathing in deeply, letting the years fall away, the failures, the fears, the quiet humiliations he'd carried. And then he played, soft at first, a whisper against the air, then fuller, richer, resonant enough to shift the dust in the corners of the room. His bow glided like rain across still water, and the melody he chose wasn't complicated. It didn't need to be. It was honest, raw, beautiful enough to silence every corner of the academy. Lena stood frozen. Students stared. And for the first time since he walked in, Ms. Halder didn't have a single word to say. When the last note dissolved into the quiet air, Morris slowly lowered the violin. He looked at Lena, only Lena. "See," he murmured, "the music is already inside you. You just have to let it speak." Her eyes glistened. Ms. Halder cleared her throat sharply, shattering the stillness. "That was fine," she muttered. "But it doesn't change the fact that your granddaughter lacks discipline." Morris stepped closer, his voice low. "She doesn't lack discipline. She lacks kindness." The instructor flinched. "And that," he added, "is supposed to come from the teacher." The room remained frozen, the tension thick enough to choke. Morris took Lena's hand gently. "Come on, sweetheart, let's take a break." And together they walked out, leaving Miss Halder stewing in the silence she once controlled so confidently. The hallway outside the practice room felt cooler, quieter, almost like the building itself exhaled with relief the moment Morris and Lena stepped out. The music academy was old, walls lined with trophies that shimmered under soft gold lights, framed photographs of students who'd gone on to make careers on stages Morris had only ever seen from afar. Everything here felt polished, untouched by the rough edges of ordinary people. Ordinary people like him. Lena kept her eyes on the floor, her hand still resting in his, small and warm. She didn't speak, not at first. She just walked with him down the long hallway, lined with closed doors, where faint melodies leaked through the cracks. Violins, pianos, cellos, all blending into a soft symphony that made the place feel grand and intimidating all at once. When they reached an empty corner bench, Morris gently guided her to sit. She did, but her shoulders were still tense, like she was trying to hold herself together by force. He waited a moment before speaking. You all right, sweetheart? Lena swallowed hard. Why does she hate me so much? Morris sighed. She doesn't hate you. She just sees the world through the wrong kind of lens. What lens? He thought for a moment. One that only recognizes perfection, not potential. Lena played with the zipper on her violin bag. Everyone else here plays better. They learn faster. They don't mess up the way I do. Morris tilted his head. They don't mess up because they're not learning from the same battles you are. She frowned. What does that even mean? It means, he said gently, kids who have everything handed to them only learn the music. Kids who have to fight for space, fight for belief, they learn the heart behind it. Lena didn't answer, but she blinked quickly, and Morris knew she was holding back tears. Finally, she whispered, I feel like I don't belong here, like everyone can see it. Morris rested a hand on her shoulder. We don't get to decide where you belong. A faint voice echoed down the hall. They both looked up. It was Miss Halder, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she talked to an administrator. Morris quickly looked away, not wanting to deal with her again. But Lena stared openly, fear tightening her posture. Seeing it broke something inside him. Listen to me, Morris said softly, turning back to her. A teacher is supposed to lift you, not crush you. If someone makes you feel small, that doesn't mean you're small. It means they are. Lena breathed shakily. But she's in charge. No, Morris said firmly. She just thinks she is. A silence settled between them as the footsteps faded. Lena leaned slightly into him. Not quite a hug, but close enough for him to feel how much he needed comfort. After a moment, she whispered, Do you think Mom would be proud of me? Morris inhaled deeply. He didn't speak right away, not because he didn't know the answer, but because the truth weighed too heavy in his chest. Lena's mother had been his daughter, a musician who had inherited his gift, but not his luck. Life had been cruel, and it took her long before her time. The ache never left him. He placed a hand over Lena's. Your mother would be beyond proud of you. She'd see herself in you every time you hold that violin. Lena's eyes softened. Really? He nodded. Really? She used to struggle too. She used to get so frustrated, she'd throw her bow across the room. Lena cracked a small smile. Seriously? Oh, she had a temper, he chuckled. Worse than mine. Lena looked down, brushing away a tear. I wish she could hear me play. She does, Morris whispered. Every time you lift that bow. The words wrapped around her like a blanket, giving her warmth she badly needed. For a moment, the heaviness in her shoulders eased. But only for a moment. A door opened at the far end of the hallway, and a group of students stepped out, laughing loudly. They were around Lena's age, maybe slightly older, wearing the academy's signature navy uniforms. One of the girls spotted Lena and immediately leaned into her friend's ear. Is she still here? The girl whispered loudly enough for her voice to carry. What, the charity case? The boy beside her smirked. Lena stiffened instantly. Morris's jaw tightened so hard he could hear the faint grind of his own teeth. He fought the impulse to storm over and shut it down. Not yet. He needed to choose his moment carefully. The boy leaned on a locker, looking directly at Lena. Maybe she should stick to school concerts. This place is for real musicians. The girl giggled. Her timing is always off. No wonder Miss Halder is tired of her. Morris stood up slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't take a step toward them. He just looked at them with a calm, unknowingly steady stare. Funny thing about music, he said quietly, but clearly, it reveals character long before it reveals skill. The boy blinked. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Morris replied, I've heard better harmony from wind chimes than than I've heard from the three of you just now." The girl's smirk disappeared immediately. Her friends exchanged awkward glances. "Come on," the boy muttered. "Let's go." They walked off quickly, mumbling under their breath. Lena stared up at Morris, eyes wide. "Grandpa." "What?" he shrugged. They were out of tune. She laughed, actually laughed, and he felt a small victory bloom in his chest. "You shouldn't talk like that to students." "Oh, I can talk like that," he said with a wink. "I'm old. I'm allowed." Lena wiped her eyes again, but this time from laughter, not sadness. Then her expression softened. "Grandpa." "Will you stay with me for the rest of my class?" He didn't even hesitate. "Of course. But Miss Halder will hate it." Morris smiled. "Good. Maybe she'll think twice about yelling if someone older than the walls is watching her." Lena giggled again, then gripped his hand. They stood together and walked toward the practice rooms, side by side. Morris didn't know exactly how things would unfold next. He only knew one thing with certainty. He wouldn't let this place break her. Not today. Not ever. And somewhere deep inside him, an old fire burned just a little brighter. When Morris and Lena returned to the classroom, the atmosphere had shifted. The other students had gone quiet, settling into their seats with instruments resting across their laps. Miss Halder stood near the whiteboard with a stack of sheet music pressed tightly against her chest, her jaw sharp and posture rigid. She looked up the instant they stepped inside. Her eyes flicked to Morris, then to Lena, and finally back to the music sheets, tightening her grip until her knuckles paled. "You're back," she said. The words weren't welcoming. They were more like an unwanted announcement. Morris offered a polite nod. "She wanted me to stay and observe." Miss Halder's lips curled slightly, as if the word observe offended her. "Parents or guardians may wait in the lobby. Classroom space is limited." "I'm not in the way," Morris replied calmly. "You're a distraction." "For who?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Her? Or you?" The tension sharpened like the fine point of a bow. The students shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting from teacher to elder, afraid to blink and miss anything. Miss Halder inhaled sharply, regaining composure. "Fine," she muttered. "If she insists." Lena sank into her chair, gripping her violin. She didn't look at the instructor. She didn't look at the students. She stared straight ahead, somewhere between determination and dread. Morris sat at the back, his presence quiet but solid, and though he didn't speak, he watched every detail with the precision of someone who had learned long ago that silence could speak far louder than words. "Everyone," Miss Halder announced, placing the sheets on a music stand. "Today we practice the exam routine. You all know it. You've all done it. Let's begin with scale progression." She turned sharply. "Lena, you start." Lena froze. "Me?" Her bow hovered uncertainly above the strings. Her breath caught in her chest. Morris leaned forward. "Breathe, sweetheart." Miss Halder raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. With trembling fingers, Lena adjusted her posture and placed the violin under her chin. Her heartbeat thudded against the instrument. She lifted the bow, and her first note cracked sharply, slicing the air like a blade. A couple of students quietly snickered. Miss Halder exhaled through her nose. Again, Lena's hands shook. She tried. The note shrilled again, uneven, painful. Again. The teacher's voice was colder now. Morris saw Lena's shoulders tense, her neck tightening from pressure. She was falling apart from her own fear, not the music. He couldn't let it continue. "Hold on," Morris said softly but firmly. Miss Halder turned toward him, annoyance flaring. "Mr. Morris, I am teaching a class, and I am helping my granddaughter, he said evenly. Miss Halder set her clipboard down with a loud smack. You are undermining my instruction. No, Morris replied. I'm reminding you how to give it. He walked toward Lena, moving slowly, gently, the way you approach someone, trying not to cry. Sweetheart, he said, kneeling slightly beside her chair. You're squeezing the bow. Relax your hand. Lena swallowed. I can't. Every time I try, it shakes. He gave her a soft smile. That's because you're trying to make it perfect. Don't. Just make it honest. She looked up at him, eyes wide, but she wants perfection. I want you, Morris said. Do you understand the difference? Her breath hitched. He continued quietly, so only she could hear. Forget the room. Forget her. Forget the eyes watching you. Close them if you have to. Let it be just you and the sound. Lena nodded weakly. She closed her eyes. Her fingers loosened around the bow. Her shoulders dropped. Morris stepped back, giving her space. She inhaled, slow, steady, and exhaled through her nose. Then she played. The first note wasn't perfect, but it wasn't broken either. It was full, real, soft but clear. She moved to the next, and the next. Her bow glided with more confidence, and the tremble faded. Her eyes opened slowly, halfway through the scale, and the moment she heard the improvement, her entire chest seemed to expand. This time, she reached the final note without faltering. The room was silent. Even Miss Halder seemed momentarily at a loss. Lena lowered her violin, cheeks flushed, eyes shining with something she hadn't felt in a long time, pride mixed with relief. Morris clapped once, firm, proud. Some of the students, unsure whether they were allowed to respond, offered hesitant but respectful nods. Miss Halder's face tightened. Better, she admitted through stiff lips. Now again, alone. Lena steadied herself, but before she could begin, Morris spoke from the corner. That's enough for a start. Miss Halder turned toward him sharply. You don't run this class. I know, Morris said calmly, but you don't own her confidence. The room froze. He stepped closer, not threateningly, but with a presence that commanded the space. You can push students, Morris said carefully. You can challenge them, you can correct them, but you cannot shame them. That is not teaching. Miss Halder blinked, her expression finally cracking. I am not shaming her. I am ensuring she meets the academy's standard. Then raise her with the standard, Morris replied, not by pressing her under it. The students exchanged glances, some shocked, some grateful. Miss Halder's jaw clenched. You don't understand what excellence demands. I understand what cruelty looks like, Morris said softly. It wears the same face, no matter the building it hides in. The instructor stiffened. You've crossed a line. And you crossed it long before I walked into this room. Silence suffocated the air. Lena lowered her violin again, eyes flicking nervously between her grandfather and her teacher. Miss Halder's voice came out thin and cold. If you have so many opinions, Mr. Morris, demonstrate again. Since you believe you know how to teach. Morris didn't flinch. He walked to the front of the room, placed his violin under his chin, and began to play. Not a performance. Not a dramatic solo. Just a simple melody, gentle, steady, warm. The kind of melody that came from someone who had lived enough years to understand music wasn't about perfection. It was about connection. A classroom softened around him. The walls didn't feel as rigid. The lights didn't feel as harsh. The students listened with genuine interest, something Miss Halder rarely commanded. When he finished, Morris lowered his bow, breathing softly. Then he looked at Lena. Music lives here, he said, tapping his chest. Not here. He tapped the sheet music. Lena nodded slowly, her eyes lingering on him, absorbing every word. Miss Halder's expression had cracked entirely now. Anger mixed with something else, insecurity. For the first time, Morris realized that she wasn't just rigid. She was threatened. Not by talent, by authenticity. She straightened. Class dismissed early, she said abruptly. Everyone out. The students looked confused, but they packed their things quietly and filed out. Lena stood from her chair, moving closer to Morris as the room emptied. When the door clicked shut, and only she and her grandfather remained, she whispered, "Grandpa, what happens now?" Morris inhaled deeply. And for the first time that day, even he wasn't sure. But he put a hand on her shoulder, gently squeezing. Now, he said softly, we find out who she becomes without a crowd watching. After the classroom emptied, and the hallway swallowed the last of the students' chatter, the silence in the room thickened like fog. It settled between Morris and Ms. Halder, in a heavy, unmoving cloud. Only the faint hum of the ceiling light filled the air. Ms. Halder stood rigidly behind her desk, hands placed flat on the surface, shoulders tight. She looked less like a teacher preparing for an argument, and more like a person struggling to hold together the thin lines of authority slipping through her fingers. Morris didn't move. He simply remained where he was, calm and steady, letting the room breathe before he did. Morris didn't react. I protected my granddaughter, that's all. I embarrassed me, she snapped. You embarrassed yourself, he replied softly. They laughed at her mistakes because you trained them to. That isn't discipline. That's humiliation, disguised as standards. Her lips firmed into a line. This academy thrives on excellence, not hand-holding. No, Morris said calmly. It thrives on fear. And you call it excellence. She scoffed. You think you understand what it takes to run a room like this, to shape children into musicians worth admiring. I shaped a girl worth loving, Morris replied. That is far more valuable. Her breath hitched, a brief, almost invisible break. Morris stepped closer, not aggressively, but with quiet authority. When she played today, for the first time in months, she wasn't choking on fear. She wasn't playing for you. She was playing for herself, period. Ms. Halder's gaze flicked away, as if the truth stung. You saw it, Morris added gently. You heard it. Don't deny it. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, but she still didn't speak. The door suddenly creaked open, and Lena poked her head in. Grandpa? She whispered hesitantly. It's all right, sweetheart. Morris motioned for her to step inside. We're just talking. Lena walked in, clutching her violin case to her chest like a shield. She didn't look at Miss Halder, afraid of the cold stare she'd grown used to. But to her shock, the teacher didn't glare. She looked unsettled. Lena, Miss Halder said stiffly. Your grandfather and I are discussing your performance. The girl winced, expecting criticism. Morris intervened. Her performance was brave. And flawed, Ms. Halder insisted. Bravery always is, Morris said. But it's where excellence begins. Those words seemed to echo in the room. Lena shifted uncomfortably. Grandpa, I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't, he assured her. You showed strength. And disobedience, Miss Halder added sharply. But her voice lacked conviction. Morris turned toward the teacher. Tell her what you saw. Tell her the truth, not the version that keeps her pride intact. Halder straightened. Her eyes met Lena's for the first time without the usual impatience. She began, then paused, as if searching for the right phrasing. Your tone improved. Slightly. Slightly? Morris raised an eyebrow. She cleared her throat, more than slightly. Lena's eyes softened with relief. But, Miss Halder added, regaining her firmness, you still lack consistency. Your posture needs work. Your bowing angle dips. Your transitions are abrupt. Pause. Lena looked down, deflated again. Morris stepped in gently. And that is why she has a teacher, not an executioner. Miss Halder inhaled sharply, but she didn't retaliate. She pressed her fingertips to the edge of her desk, grounding herself. Pause. You think I don't care, she said quietly. You think I enjoy being hard on them, that I wake up wanting to break their spirits. Pause. Morris didn't respond. He allowed her the space to speak. Pause. I wasn't always like this, she continued. Years ago, I believed in gentleness, in patience, in nurturing talent instead of punishing flaws. Her voice trembled. But this academy, it changes you. Parents expect perfection. The board expects perfection. And when students fail, they don't blame them. She tapped her chest with 2 fingers. They blame us. Lena blinked, surprised by the sudden honesty. I started pushing harder, Miss Halder said, then harder. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to teach without pressure. Her voice cracked for half a second, but she swallowed it back quickly, regaining composure. Morris softened. Pressure can polish, he said gently, but too much pressure crushes. Her eyes lifted to his. So what do I do now? Start over, Morris replied. With her, with all of them. Not as a judge, but as a guide. Miss Halder looked at Lena again, really looked at her. Not as a stubborn student, not as a potential embarrassment, but as a child who wanted to be heard. I can try, she said quietly. Lena stepped forward timidly. I want to learn from you. But not, like before. Halder nodded once, the smallest but most genuine gesture she'd shown all day. Understood. The tension cracked. Something softer took its place. Morris exhaled slowly, relief easing into his shoulders. Then we can move forward. But the moment wasn't finished yet. A knock sounded from the doorframe. A tall man in a suit stepped inside, the academy director, holding a clipboard and wearing a politely stern expression. Miss Halder, he said briskly. I was informed there was an incident. She stiffened. Morris turned slightly, prepared for confrontation if necessary. But before he could speak, Lena blurted out, It was my fault. Both adults froze. I got nervous, she continued quickly, and I played badly. Miss Halder didn't do anything wrong, she was just teaching. The director narrowed his eyes. Is that true? Morris stepped forward. No. Don't put this on her. He gestured to his granddaughter. She's protecting her teacher. The director's attention snapped to Morris. And you are? A grandfather, he said, and a witness. The director scanned the room. The tension, the emotion, the lingering vulnerability on everyone's faces. He nodded slowly. This academy has no room for unnecessary hostility. We expect professionalism from staff and calm from visiting family. His gaze sharpened. If this escalates again, I will take administrative action. Miss Halder lowered her eyes. Understood. Morris held back the immediate retort burning in his throat. Lena tugged his sleeve softly, silently asking him not to argue. The director left as quickly as he entered. Silence returned. Ms. Halder lifted her head. I meant what I said, she told Morris and Lena. I will do better, and I'll expect both of you to do the same. Morris almost smiled. Fair enough. Lena exhaled, relief washing over her. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave, Miss Halder spoke one final time. Lena, she called out gently. Next class, come 5 minutes early. We'll work on your posture together. The girl's eyes lit up. Yes, ma'am. Morris opened the door for his granddaughter, and as they stepped into the hallway, he felt something shift inside him. He had walked in ready for a fight. He was leaving with something better. A chance for change. The hallway outside the music room felt strangely lighter than it had an hour earlier. Students' footsteps clicked across the polished floors, echoing faintly as Morris and Lena walked side by side. The tension that once clung to Lena's shoulders had faded, replaced by something gentler, like the very first breath after a storm. But as they made their way toward the exit, Morris could sense a hesitation in her steps. "You're quiet," he said softly. She clutched the strap of her violin case. "Grandpa, was I wrong? For speaking up? For telling the truth to Miss Halder? I don't want her to hate me." Morris placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "She doesn't hate you. She was hurting. You helped her remember she's human." Lena glanced up at him. "Do you really think she'll change?" He nodded. "I think she already started." Before she could respond, a sudden voice called from behind them. "Excuse me." They turned to see a boy around Lena's age sprinting down the hallway. His curls bounced wildly as he ran, a viola case thumping against his back. "Lena," he wheezed, stopping just inches away. "That was insane. I heard what happened. People are talking about it in the cafeteria." Lena went pale. "Talking? About me?" The boy nodded vigorously. "About you and Miss Halder and your grandpa. Some kid said they've never seen her look so, I don't know, shocked." Lena's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Great. That's all I needed." But the boy grinned. No, people think you were brave." Morris raised an eyebrow, amused. "Is that right?" "Totally," the boy said. "Someone finally stood up to her. Everyone acts like she's carved from stone. But today, you made her actually look like a person." Lena blinked, not expecting praise. "What's your name, son?" Morris asked. "Evan," the boy replied eagerly. "I sit 2 rows behind her at orchestra practice." Morris extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Evan." The boy shook it enthusiastically. "You too, and, Lena?" He shifted nervously. "Some kids were wondering if, maybe you'd want to sit with us at lunch sometime. You know, since you kinda became a legend today." Lena's jaw dropped. "A legend? Me?" Evan nodded. "You stood up for yourself. And for everyone else too." Morris glanced at his granddaughter, her eyes bright with a mixture of disbelief and hope. That small spark of recognition from her peers meant more than she would ever admit. "I'll think about it," Lena said shyly. "Pool. Okay, I gotta run before Coach sees me." Evan rushed off, waving. "See you tomorrow." As his sneakers squeaked away across the tiles, Lena let out a breath. She didn't realize she'd been holding. "I was so scared," she whispered. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared," Morris said. "It means doing the right thing, even when you are." They stepped outside into the early evening air. The sky had dipped into soft shades of lavender and peach, warm light glinting off the school's glass doors. Parents idled in the parking lot, engines humming, children skipping toward cars. Lena slowed her pace. "Grandpa, do you think I can really get better, like actually good?" Morris stopped walking and turned her gently to face him. "You are already good," he said. "But if you want to be better, then yes, you will be, because you're choosing it, not because someone yelled at you." "But what if I mess up again?" He smiled. "Then you try again. Mistakes aren't the enemy. Fear is." She nodded slowly, letting the words sink into the parts of herself that had been fragile for too long. They reached Morris's car. A worn but well-loved sedan he'd kept running with more care than most people gave their homes. He opened the passenger door, but before Lena stepped in, she paused. "Grandpa, will you help me practice tonight?" Morris laughed softly. "You'll be begging me to stop before we're done." She giggled and climbed inside. As Morris walked around to the driver's seat, he noticed someone standing near the school entrance. Miss Halder. She wasn't glaring, nor did she appear tense. Instead, she watched Lena with a thoughtful, almost uncertain expression. Their eyes met across the distance. She gave the smallest nod, a fragile truce. Morris nodded back. He got in the car, started the engine, and they drove away from the school. The sun dipped lower, casting golden light across the dashboard. Lena cracked open her violin case, inspecting the polished wood lovingly. "You know, even when I sounded bad today, you didn't look disappointed. Because I never was. But why?" He smiled at her reflection in the mirror. "Because music isn't supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be honest. And you played honestly." She traced her finger along the strings. "I want to play something you taught me." Morris chuckled. "You're gonna play in the car while I'm driving?" "Just a little." He shook his head, amused. "All right. But if I crash because of your talent, that's on you." She lifted the violin to her shoulder, finding her posture naturally. Better than this morning, lighter, freer. She drew the bow gently, producing a warm, trembling note that filled the small space, like sunlight slipping through a window. Morris's heart softened. This was the sound of healing. When she finished the short melody, she lowered the instrument with a shy smile. "Was that okay?" "It was beautiful," he whispered. They drove on as the song lingered, blending with the evening breeze through the slightly open window. But as they turned onto their street, Morris noticed a vehicle parked a little too close to his driveway. A sleek sedan with tinted windows. One he didn't recognize. He frowned. Lena followed his gaze. "Do you know them?" "No." His tone shifted, quiet, alert. The car's engine was off, but something about the way it was positioned made his instincts twitch. He pulled into the driveway slowly, watching the sedan carefully as he parked. Lena whispered, "Grandpa, is something wrong?" Morris gently put his hand on hers. "Get your things. Stay close to me." His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. Because Morris had once lived a life where strange cars and unknown faces were warnings, not coincidences. A life he thought he'd left behind. But the past didn't always stay in the past. Sometimes it found its way home. And this time, he wasn't alone. The sedan with the tinted windows didn't move. It sat there like a silent shadow on the edge of Morris's yard. Too still, too intentional. Evening light stretched long across the driveway, painting the car in muted gold. But nothing about it felt warm. Lena clutched her violin case tighter. "Grandpa, who do you think it is?" Morris scanned the car carefully before closing his door. "Stay behind me." They stepped out slowly, gravel crunching under their feet. The air had shifted, no longer the peaceful calm of early evening, but something sharper, tense, like the moment right before a storm breaks. Morris approached the sedan with measured steps, his breathing steady, his posture firm. He'd seen setups like this before, back when life had been less predictable, back when he dealt with people who didn't knock before bringing trouble to your doorstep. He called out, voice clear but controlled. "Evening, can I help you with something?" The driver's window rolled down just an inch, barely enough to see anything. A low voice filtered through the gap. "You're Morris Tillman." It wasn't a question. It was confirmation. Morris didn't blink. Who's asking? Someone who needs to talk. The voice was calm, almost detached. A man's silhouette shifted behind the glass. Lena's hand squeezed Morris's jacket from behind. Grandpa, let's just go inside. Not yet, he murmured. The man inside the car continued. This isn't about today. It isn't about the school. It's about something bigger. Morris kept his stance neutral. Speak plainly. Not here. The engine sputtered, as if preparing to start. Morris stepped closer, jaw tightening. If you came to my home, you better finish your sentence here. A pause. Then the man said, someone from your past is looking for you. The words hit Morris like a cold wind. Past. A single word that carried entire histories. Who? Morris asked. But the man didn't answer. Instead, he rolled the window back up. The engine rumbled to life, and the sedan pulled away smoothly, silently, like a ghost slipping off into dusk. Morris stood still until the taillights disappeared down the road. Lena's voice trembled. Grandpa, what does that mean? He exhaled slowly. It means someone stirring up old dust. She tugged his sleeve, fear creeping into her tone. Are we in danger? Morris knelt down and held her shoulders. Look at me. She lifted her eyes. You are safe, he said firmly. I will never let anything happen to you. Not ever. Her breathing settled, but her hands were still shaking. They walked inside the house, locking the door behind them. Morris closed the blinds, then switched on the kitchen light. The soft glow cast warm reflections across the room, but the tension remained. Lena set her violin on the table carefully. Grandpa, who could it be? Someone bad? He hesitated, not because he didn't know, but because he did. There was a name he hadn't spoken in years, a shadow he thought he'd outrun. But before he could answer, the phone rang. A single, sharp chime. The sound sliced through the room like a blade. Morris exchanged a quick look with Lena, before lifting the receiver cautiously. Tillman residence, he said. A deep voice answered. Mr. Dillman, the teacher claims you created a hostile environment. I didn't want this to happen. Shh. He hugged her tightly. This isn't your fault. It's adults who don't know how to admit they were wrong. He pulled back and lifted her chin. Listen, I need you to focus on your music tonight. Practice. Ground yourself. Let me handle the rest. But what about you? I can face anyone, he said softly. As long as you're all right. She nodded, though fear still lingered in her eyes. Morris stood and walked to the window. Outside, the street lamps flickered on, casting long shadows across the pavement. He scanned the road carefully. No cars, no silhouettes, no threats. But he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Someone was watching. He dialed a number he hadn't used in years. The line clicked. A gruff voice answered. Haven't heard from you in a decade. I need information, Morris said. Someone's looking for me, but he knew it could bring trouble just as easily. Behind him, Lena had begun tuning her violin. Soft, trembling notes rising through the house. Morris closed his eyes. Her music was the only thing that kept him steady. The only thing worth fighting for. And if tomorrow brought war, he'd face it head-on. Morning arrived with a muted, gray sky, as if the world itself was bracing for what was coming. Morris stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of his clean shirt. The lines on his face looked deeper today, not from age, but from the weight of everything he was carrying. From the living room, came the soft notes of Lena's violin. She practiced gently, slowly, breathing through each movement. Morris had told her to keep practicing, to stay grounded, and she had listened. When he stepped out, she lowered her bow. "Are you leaving now?" she asked, eyes wide with worry. "In a few minutes." She set the violin down, then walked toward him. "Grandpa, what if they lie? What if they twist it and make it all your fault?" Morris placed a steady hand on her cheek. "Then I'll untwist it." She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. "Can I come with you?" "No, you stay here. Practice. Eat breakfast. And keep the door locked. But no arguing." He knelt so they were eye to eye. "Lena, you are my heart. I can't focus if I'm worried about you." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. Morris hugged her tightly, letting her hold on for an extra second. "You're stronger than you know," he whispered. "And so are you," she replied. He kissed the top of her head, grabbed his coat, and stepped outside. The sky matched his mood. Heavy, quiet, tense. As he drove toward Ridgeview Police Station, he replayed yesterday's events again and again. Miss Helder's cracked composure, the shadowed stranger in the sedan, the phone call from Officer Dane, and the name that had hung unsaid in the air, someone from his past. He parked the car, took a steady breath, and walked inside. The station lobby was sterile and cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A receptionist motioned him toward a conference room. Inside sat Officer Dane, the academy director, and, unexpectedly, Miss Helder. Her presence surprised him. Her posture was stiff, but her eyes were softer than yesterday. Officer Dane cleared his throat. "Mr. Tillman, we appreciate you coming in. We have conflicting accounts about what happened yesterday." Morris sat calmly. "There's nothing conflicting. I stood up for a child." The director interjected. "A teacher reported you for creating a hostile situation." "And I reported her for humiliating a student," Morris countered, voice even. "Does your file show that part?" The director shifted uncomfortably. Ms. Halder's voice cut through the tension. "Stop." All eyes turned to her. She looked at Morris, then at the officers, then finally at her own hands, which trembled slightly. "I lied," she said quietly. The room stilled. "I filed the report because I was embarrassed," she continued. "Not because he threatened me, not because he was dangerous, but because he exposed the way I've been teaching, the way I've been failing." Officer Dane blinked. "Ms. Halder?" "No," she said firmly. "This is my responsibility." She inhaled deeply, gathering strength. "Morris Tillman didn't create a hostile environment. I did." The director leaned forward. "Are you sure you want to make that statement?" She nodded. "Yes, I owe the truth. To Lena, to myself, and to this academy." Morris held her gaze. For the first time, he saw not defiance, not cruelty, but remorse. Officer Dane scribbled notes, then turned to Morris. "In that case, Mr. Tillman, you're clear." Morris nodded once. The meeting could have ended there, should have ended there. But the door opened, and the man from the sedan walked in. Even in full daylight, he looked like a shadow. Officer Dane frowned. "Can we help you?" The man pulled out a badge. Federal. The room tensed. He faced Morris directly. "Mr. Tillman." Morris's shoulders straightened. The man continued. "You left a world behind. A world that doesn't forget people like you." Ms. Halder's breath caught. The director looked confused. Officer Dane remained alert. "What do you want?" Morris asked. "Information," the man replied. "Someone you worked with, someone dangerous, is resurfacing. We need your insight. I'm retired. The agent nodded slowly. Retired, yes, but not irrelevant. Morris folded his arms. I don't do that work anymore. This isn't work, the man said. It's a warning. The agent leaned closer. Protect your granddaughter. Someone out there remembers you. The room felt colder. Morris's jaw tightened. Who? We're still tracking him. But when we know, he handed Morris a card. You'll be the first to hear. The agent stepped back toward the door, but paused. And Mr. Tillman, he added softly, whatever you think you outran, it's running again. Then he was gone. Silence swallowed the room. Miss Halder looked shaken. Morris, what was that? Something from another lifetime, he said quietly. Nothing you need to worry about. Officer Dane cleared his throat uneasily. Well, with the teacher's statement updated, this case is closed. You're free to go. Morris rose from his seat. Good. He walked out of the room without another word. The air outside felt heavier, not darker, just aware, as if the world had started watching again. But Morris didn't slow. He didn't panic. He didn't break. He drove home with purpose. And when he opened the front door, he found Lena sitting on the couch, violin in her lap, waiting. She jumped up as soon as she saw him. Grandpa, what happened? Are you okay? Morris knelt, pulled her into a tight hug, and whispered, I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm right here. She held him just as tightly. Pause. After a moment, she pulled back. So, everything's fine. He smiled softly. The school situation? Yes. Everything else? He exhaled. We're going to be all right. Lena nodded, trusting him completely. Can we practice now? She asked gently. Morris kissed her forehead. Yeah, we can practice. Quote. She lifted her violin, and the first trembling note filled the room. Quote. Not fearful, not broken, but brave. And Morris closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him, knowing that whatever storm approached next, he would face it like he always had, calm, steady, unshakable. Quote, for her. Quote, always for her. Quote, that I know, comma, as follows. If you felt this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful narratives just like this one. Tell us in the comments, what would you do in a moment like this? Your support helps us bring more emotional, cinematic stories to life. Thanks for watching, and stay strong.